What this boy found in his parents' garden was incredible. He loved messing around in the dirt, but mostly he found useless bottle caps or bottles. That would not be the case at this time. Tommy held the rock in his hand and immediately knew that this thing was special. But that would be an understatement. Because within one day they were called by the police. Boy finds strange rock in backyard. One day later his parents are called by police. In the quaint little town of Monroe, where sidewalks wore a coat of amiable familiarity, stood a homely, warm-looking house, a haven to a little boy who was a treasure hunter at heart. Every inch of the house and its backyard spoke volumes about the boy who lived there, the invincible young explorer who had breathed life into its existence, Tommy. A sturdy 8-year-old with an insatiable curiosity and a vibrant imagination that surpassed his years, Tommy was no ordinary child. His dreams were larger than life itself, filled with adventures that had him unearthing valuable relics and cracking ancient codes, much like his favorite movie hero, Indiana Jones. Last week, Tommy and his father watched an Indiana Jones movie together. And since then, Tommy was utterly convinced that he was the young avatar of the legendary adventurer. His backyard, his playfield, had suddenly transformed into an unexplored wilderness, replete with hidden artifacts and mysterious objects waiting to be discovered. Every morning, armed with his favorite cowboy hat, a makeshift whip, and a satchel slung across his tiny shoulders, Tommy set off on his quest, leaving no stone unturned. His parents, Laura and Greg, would wave him off, indulging in his fantasies. Their little boy's innocent zeal filled their hearts with joy, and they loved hearing the fantastic tales Tommy spun around his findings at the end of each day. Underneath the weeping willow or behind the picket fence, he often surprised himself with interesting finds that immediately sparked stories in his mind. One day it was a peculiar-shaped shell, the next, an old faded photograph, and sometimes he found discarded toys which, in Tommy's imagination, held secrets of an untold past. Indeed, Tommy had a knack for finding things, and he loved it. He loved the promise each new day held, the secrets that his backyard might hold for the future. But he was about to find out. His heart fluttered with excitement every time his spade struck something unusual. His eyes sparkled with anticipation each time he held an artifact in his hands, ready to unveil its story. The latest treasure Tommy had stumbled upon was an old glass bottle. It was a simple artifact covered in the timeless silt of the river that flowed beyond his backyard. Yet, to Tommy, it was a priceless relic from a bygone era. After washing away its layers of grime and with a bit of research assisted by his parents, they discovered the bottle hailed from 1938. The discovery thrilled Tommy beyond measure, and he couldn't wait to tell his friends about it at school. Every day, Tommy's little adventures grew grander. His horizons expanded, and he discovered new corners of his magical backyard. But unknown to him, his biggest find was yet to come. A find that would eclipse all others, a find that would steer his everyday adventures into an extraordinary journey, a find that would turn his quaint little world upside down. One so bizarre that even the police had to get involved. With Sunday being here and the promise of an adventurous day stretching ahead, Tommy sprung out of bed with unusual vigor. He did not have to worry about school, and his whole day lay in front of him, a clean slate that he was eager to fill with his explorations. His ritual morning preparations began in earnest. Tommy was dressed in his best Indiana Jones outfit. He strapped on his leather boots and tucked his faithful toy whip in his belt. He checked his backpack, making sure his shovel, a few plastic bags for his finds, and his ever-handy notebook for sketching and noting observations were all in place. He packed a lunch his mom had prepared, promising to return only when he was either too tired or had discovered something extraordinary. His parents, sipping their morning coffee, watched as their little boy prepared for his adventure. They didn't quite understand Tommy's fascination with the garden, but they didn't interfere. Laura and Greg had always encouraged their son's creativity and curiosity. By mid-morning, Tommy was on his hands and knees, examining the previously unexplored corners of their vast backyard, hoping to find a big haul. There was something exhilarating about probing the unknown, something satisfying about digging up the layers of the past, even if it were just a simple pebble or a lost toy. His hands moved swiftly, methodically, unearthing layer after layer of soil. He kept digging, his keen eyes not missing any oddity. His tiny fingers carefully and swiftly sifted through the dirt. Every object he found was examined closely before being discarded or bagged for further inspection. Time flew by unnoticed. It was mid-afternoon when Tommy's shovel struck something hard. Startled, he dropped the shovel and bent down to examine the object. He could see a part of it, but it was too deeply embedded in the earth for him to make out what it was. So, he switched to digging with his hands. After a few minutes of careful excavation, he managed to pull out a strangely shaped rock. It was unlike anything he had seen before. It was uneven, with bumps and dimples that gave it an almost emerald-like appearance. It also had a metallic sheen, making Tommy wonder if it was a rock at all. His heart pounded in excitement. Even at his tender age, Tommy knew he had found something significant. However, he was also slightly confused. Why would a rock be buried so deep? And why did it have a metallic shine? His treasure hunter instincts told him to keep it safe until he could figure out what it was. He rushed home, ignoring his fatigue. His parents were surprised to see him back so early. His excitement was infectious, and they eagerly waited as he took the object out of his bag. They stared at it in awe. The rock was indeed unusual, its surface sparkling with a beautiful glow. What followed was a commotion none of them had expected. Because the next day, Tommy brought the rock to show and tell at school. And that started a chain reaction of commotion. Soon, their house was swarming with journalists and curiosity-filled townsfolk. Tommy, in his innocence, was oblivious to the gravity of the situation. To him, it was an affirmation of his belief, an affirmation that treasures could indeed be found in one's backyard. But when the police called his parents one day later, even he knew that this find was a serious thing. The bizarre rock, his treasure, had taken him one step closer to his dream of being the real-life Indiana Jones. It had to be because, in the movies, everyone also wanted a part of the treasure. And in his case, people in the community wanted the same. What could this mysterious rock be? And what did the police call his parents for? Did they know something more? There was an air of tension and uncertainty in their house as the phone rang in the still afternoon, breaking the silence. Laura picked it up, her face turning as white as a sheet as she listened to the person on the other end. The police officer was explaining something to her in a grave tone, leaving her nodding in disbelief. Tommy, who had been watching his mother anxiously, was suddenly handed the phone. "It's for you," Laura told him, her voice a mere whisper. He could see the confusion and bewilderment in her eyes. Tommy held the receiver, his heart pounding in his chest. A million questions flew around in his mind as he put the phone to his ear. "Hello, Tommy," began the police officer, his voice calm and soothing. "I've got some interesting news about your discovery." He then asked Tommy to fetch the rock and hold it under cold water. The police officer assured him that it would help wash off the sludge and dirt. Tommy followed his instructions as closely as he could, being thorough but careful. And within a few minutes, the rock transformed into a gleaming, golden nugget, its beauty enchanting the little boy. The police officer then told Tommy what he held in his hands. The explanation left Tommy speechless, his hands trembling slightly as he held the rock. He could hear his parents gasping in the background. The rock he had discovered in his backyard was not a simple rock. It was a chunk of a meteorite. A meteorite made of gold. The officer explained that the rock was part of a meteorite that had fallen in Monroe several years ago. The meteorite was believed to have shattered into pieces upon impact, scattering fragments over a very specific small area. The peculiar rock Tommy had found was probably one of those fragments. The meteorite's composition was rare, primarily consisting of gold and other precious metals. The rock in Tommy's hands was estimated to be worth a fortune. News of Tommy's incredible find had reached the police department when one of his teachers had their interest piqued during show and tell. His teacher was a stargazer and had followed the news of the falling meteor a couple of years ago. Tommy stood there, stunned into silence. His heart pounded against his ribs, the implications of the officer's words slowly sinking in. He was holding in his hands an object from space, a golden meteorite. The excitement, wonder, and disbelief were overwhelming. Tommy looked at the shiny object, his eyes wide and round. It was no longer just an artifact for him. It had transformed into a precious treasure from outer space, a symbol of all the unknown and mysterious things that lay beyond the Earth's atmosphere. It was a piece of the universe, a reminder of his dream to be an explorer, an adventurer. But while Tommy started daydreaming, the officer continued talking, snapping the boy out of his thoughts. "Tommy, we are not done," he said. The officer then explained something that was more surprising. Until that point, the location of the meteor fragment's impact, also known as the hot zone, was unknown to the authorities. The precise area where these pieces had fallen was shrouded in mystery, eluding their grasp. But Tommy's find had finally given them a breakthrough. It provided them with a point of reference to calculate the impact zone. With this discovery, it was possible to determine the likely impact zone of the meteor fragments. The area of the impact zone was calculated to be approximately 100 square meters. "So there are more of these things in the ground? Around our garden?" Tommy asked, his eyes sparkling with excitement. The police officer confirmed that it might indeed be the case. Tommy was practically buzzing with anticipation. He was already imagining himself armed with his shovel, digging into the earth and unearthing more fragments of the meteor. It was like a dream come true, a real treasure hunt right in his backyard. However, the officer quickly calmed his enthusiasm. The officer explained that it was not safe for Tommy to start digging on his own. Considering the potential worth and significance of these meteor fragments, the authorities would send over a team of professional archaeologists and law enforcement officers to investigate the surrounding area. They would cordon off the 100 square meter area and begin a systematic search and excavation. Within a few hours, their garden turned into an archaeological dig site. It all was so exciting to the young adventurer. The backyard was bustling with officers, archaeologists, and their equipment. They began the careful and methodical process of digging, carefully examining the ground for more meteor fragments. They put up tape around the area, marking it off limits for sightseeing civilians to ensure the safety of everyone present. "How exciting!" Tommy exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with anticipation and his heart thudding in his chest. His parents stood by, their faces a mixture of awe and disbelief. They couldn't believe that their son's innocent backyard exploration had led to such a significant discovery. For Tommy, however, this was the most thrilling adventure he could have asked for. It was like he was living out his Indiana Jones fantasies. And what made it even more special was what happened next. Tommy was already happy with the first discovery, like we said before. But on this already very special day, Tommy would get a surprise that would change his life forever. He was watching the excavation from the house when a man knocked on the door with a very special offer. "Could Tommy come outside for a moment? I want to discuss something with him." The authorities, appreciating Tommy's enthusiasm and acknowledging his initial find, gave him a special chance to help them in their search for the fragments. They provided him with a set of guidelines and instructions to follow while looking for the fragments. By doing this, Tommy could contribute to their effort without jeopardizing his safety or the integrity of the meteor fragments. Following the instructions of the archaeologists, Tommy scanned the area diligently. And his efforts were rewarded when he was the first one to find another meteor fragment. The excitement and pride on his face were priceless as he held up the fragment. The professionals confirmed it, another golden meteorite fragment found by none other than Tommy. The 8-year-old adventurer was so proud. This discovery added a new chapter to Tommy's story. The ordinary boy from Monroe, with his dreams of adventure and his extraordinary luck, had found not one but 2 meteor fragments right in his backyard. This story was one for the ages, filled with the thrill of discovery, the joy of exploration, and the spirit of adventure that every child possesses. But the adventure was far from over. As the days passed, the team of archaeologists and officers meticulously worked on the site, occasionally assisted by Tommy. Their diligence paid off when they unearthed more than 80 meteor fragments in the surrounding area. It was a find of enormous value and astronomical significance. Tommy's little town of Monroe had suddenly transformed into an important hotspot for extraterrestrial artifacts. Remarkably, out of all the meteor fragments found, a substantial 15 were discovered right in the garden of Tommy's parents. These pieces of celestial bodies had been lying dormant, waiting to be discovered, under the very same dirt Tommy had been playing in every day. The total value of the meteor fragments was estimated to be around an astounding $6 million. It was unbelievable for Tommy, his parents, and the whole town. But what was even more thrilling was the fact that Tommy himself had found 6 of those pieces, contributing massively to this unique treasure trove. The government, of course, took them. But in the end, it didn't matter where the fragments ended up. Tommy had lived his dream of becoming a real-life Indiana Jones.